Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samyao sanputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samyao sanputoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in millions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Shifu Shangren, Venerable Master, Dhamma friends, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to be with you today. My name is Heng Sure, and it's Sunday, August 9th here in the Gold Coast of Queensland, and it's Saturday, August 8th back in California, where many folks are listening in. Around the world, we have people listening in China, thanks to the generosity and the hard work of our tireless volunteers who translate these words and the sutra's words into Chinese for Chinese listeners. And as we progress over the years, maybe we'll have a Spanish translation, maybe a Vietnamese translation. We'll see. Meanwhile, we are here to look into the Flower Garland Sutra. And this is the 10 stages chapter, the 十地品, 大方广佛华严经十地品, which is a story of how a bodhisattva comes to be, right? How you make a bodhisattva. And we're at the 10th out of 10 stages. We're almost at the very end of this text, this chapter. So we'll dive right in, bring up our text, and when we come back after an invocation, we're going to, let's see here, we're going to start on page, here we go, scrolling around. We'll be on page 38 when we come back. Okay, now to get where we got to go, we scroll up to the top. This is the name of the sutra and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who brought it to us originally. And what we're going to do now is do an invocation. We're going to invite them to draw near and bless this assembly, lend their light, chase the darkness. So we recite it in Chinese and do it 7 times. Welcome to join me. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Huan Yin Ai Wu Bo Sa Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Huan Jin Ai Yin Hai Wu Bo Sa 12 strings on a carbon fiber body make for a nice guitar sound. To welcome the August Assembly of the Avatamsaka. And Master Hua would tell us, he would say, if you're sincere, they come. And he would say, oh, you can't see them? Well, be more sincere. Clearly, he saw them. And the invocation was a real thing. We're on page 38, 佛子次第菩萨依自愿力, right, at that place. Now, I reviewed some of the recent lectures. Thanks to YouTube, we can quickly go back and see what I said before. And my impression was that I wanted more exposure to the text. I wanted more interpretation. I want to go deeper into the various levels of the text, meaning the language level, the textual level, some context around the book itself, and then the meaning and the meaning level, meaning make it real, make it relevant. Particularly because what occurred to me was humility is good, and the fact that I'm here as an American Australian Buddhist monk speaking English from a text that most of the Mahayana Buddhist world you could say is afraid of. That's too much? If that were not true, why don't they explain it more? Because it's such a powerful, wonderful, foundational text. Well, people are afraid of it because, number one, it's big and long, and they're also afraid of it because of a reputation that is not grounded in fact. What's the reputation of this sutra? The reputation is it's philosophy. It's too lofty. It's cosmological. You can't, no ordinary person, or even ordinary monk or nun, is qualified to explain it. Well, there are elements of philosophy in the sutra, and it certainly has a scope that is as big as the Dharma realm, but to say that somehow it's too high for an ordinary person to grasp is an opinion, I think, probably shared by someone who's never actually looked at the text itself. So, reading this, I was thinking, gee whiz, what do I bring to this? Well, what I bring to the sutra that might be of interest to listeners is a Western contemporary take on it. Certainly, I don't have enough wisdom or erudition to be definitive, to say this is what it means. What I do have, you could say, in front of me or behind me, supporting me, is my teacher, our teacher, Master Shren Hua, who said, open the text and explain it. If you know one part, explain one part. If you know 10 parts, explain 10 parts. 100 parts, explain 100 parts. The only thing to fear is that you won't open it and sincerely make a sincere effort to understand it. That's to be afraid of, because then the Dharma is dead in the world. So, by saying that, what was he doing? He was giving us permission, myself and my Dharma colleagues, monks and nuns who studied with our teacher as well, and the laity as well, giving us permission to put our, xian chou, they say, just show off how much we don't know boldly. There's no question that there are limits to our knowledge and our wisdom here, but that's okay. I don't pretend to be otherwise. So, with that permission that our teacher gives us and says, you go ahead, we do this. This is something we do. We interpret texts. We scratch our heads and go, what do you suppose that means? That's amazing. And then, with a clean heart, just say what I think it means, That's okay. That's good enough, I think, to make it worth our while. And on one hand, you're getting, because I'm here talking for an hour with the help of all these Dharma friends, around the world. I'm sitting here for an hour a week or more, talking about the sutra. What my job is to get out of the way, actually, to be like a lens, you could say. When I put a lens on a camera, you're not looking at the lens, you're looking through the lens at whatever the camera's pointed at, right? So if I'm doing my job as an interpreter, contemporary Western educated interpreter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, I want to disappear so that everyone listening feels like they saw the text clearly. And you make your own judgment, your own decisions, your own impressions, your own reactions to the Buddha's words, not to me, right? As much as I get in the way, that's how much I've failed to serve the sutra and the audience, right? So, important to be the lens, and the clean lens, polish it, polish the dust off the lens so that people can see through it at the sutra. Now, I'm never going to be, I think objectivity is a myth. There is no such thing as objectivity. Everything is subjective. All communication has to come through one set of skandhas, right? One set of body, mouth, and mind, and wisdom and samadhi, or its absence. So you can't take the cook out of the food. You can't take the explainer out of the lecture. But you can reduce the coloring, the slant, or at least identify when clearly you're slanted or coloring it, right? So I hope to deliver an honest lecture, serving as a lens so that people can see through what I'm doing to focus on the text. And if I've done that, then I don't have to apologize so much for the limitations here. Okay? So if that's an okay bargain, then let's, as people who are interested in what the Buddha said in the Flower Garland Sutra, let's dig in, let's see what it says. So that was I was looking at reviewing past lectures, and those are my thoughts on what we're engaged in our enterprise here. So, already, let's do this paragraph, and we're going to do 2 or 3 of these today. Here we go. 佛自此地菩萨以自愿力起大悲云，正大法雷，通明无畏，一味电光，福德智慧而为密云，现种种身，周旋往返，于一念请，普遍十方，百千亿哪有他世界，微尘数国度，言说大法，摧伏魔怨。Oh boy. Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva on this stage lifts up a cloud of great compassion by means of the power of his vows. He sounds the vast thunder of Dharma and forms thick clouds of blessings, virtue, and wisdom, using clear understanding and fearlessness as flashes of lightning. He makes all manner of bodies appear. They go and come, encircling to and fro. In a single instant of thought, he pervades throughout as many world systems as there are fine motes of dust in hundreds of thousands of nayutis, of kotas of nayutis of world systems. He proclaims the great Dharma and subdues the hatred of demons. Wow. Drama, right? Actually, this one is better in Chinese. The English translation, I think, is adequate, but somehow it doesn't carry the drama of the Chinese paragraph. Let's take 2 steps back and say where this comes from. We've been hearing about our Bodhisattva who's about to become a Buddha. We've been hearing about his or her memory. And the Avatamsaka, in classic flower garland style, which is florid and graphic and over the top to the max, in describing the Bodhisattva's ability to hold Dharma in his mind, right? Saying, fundamentally, you can't understand how much Dharma this Bodhisattva's memory can hold. And our speaker in the sutra, Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva, says, I can only draw you a picture. I can't, you won't know it, but we'll point to it. I'll give you something you can basically comprehend. And then you have to make the jump yourself to realize how keen and capacitative, how big his memory is. He can remember a lot of Dharma, and then goes on to paint this incredible picture of using oceans and dragons spilling down rain into the oceans, and the oceans never overflow. Likewise, this Bodhisattva. And then from the picture of the dragons raining into the ocean, you get multiple dragons and multiple oceans filling up worlds in number like dust motes. That's an Avatamsaka picture. And then, from there, he switches to the other side of the analogy and says, like that, our Bodhisattva's mind, when he hears the Dharma from one Buddha, and then goes on to describe, how you multiply that by multiple Tathagatas, and how all the living beings in these worlds where Buddhas are, and how skillful these beings would be at remembering, and all of that, once we get this whole thing, then it says that much would not even be a sliver of our Bodhisattva's ability to memorize, to remember. Okay, and then it goes to the point about what? That this person we're talking about started out where we are, which is, interested in Dharma and on the path. Someone who is cultivating their way towards spiritual awakening. What would it be? Heading towards purifying body and mind, and then heading towards samadhi, this state of stillness, and then the state of wisdom that arises out of samadhi. So precepts, samadhi, and wisdom, jie ding hui, shila, samadhi, prajna. He started there, but look where he is now, right? Look where he is now. So almost at Buddhahood, which is to say what? A human mind, yours and mine, uncovered and functioning with all cylinders firing, right? This is indeed, the Avatamsaka is a spiritual classic, and so as a spiritual classic, there's all kinds of devices used to communicate, like, stories of Jesus, parables, telling about the widow's mite, right? That story. The rich man comes in with cartloads full of oil and rice and drinks and delicious foods and fruits, and Jesus goes, very, very nice, lovely, right? But doesn't pay a lot of attention. And then the old lady shuffles in, and she's got a little bottle, size of a teacup, something like this, and it's half full of oil, and she pours it gently out into the lamp and the altar, and then Jesus comes down and welcomes her and praises her. And the disciples go, but that's comparatively nothing compared to what came in the door before her. And the the wise teacher says, yeah, but you don't know what that little bit of oil meant to her. That was everything she had. Whereas the rich man, he just wrote that off. That was, a tax break for him. So no sincerity involved. And it didn't hurt him at all, but for her, that was everything. So comparatively speaking, in the parable, right, the old lady's offering was the real offering. So what is that? That's a story. The Buddha did the same thing, right? The Buddha, this very similar story in the Buddha's teaching about comparative value. So these are parables, and spiritual texts are full of these ways. They're devices, they're methods for teaching, to give a picture, right? I was chuckling because back in my college days, when personal computers were relatively new, there was one of my favorite text editors, because it could handle Chinese and English, was called Text Edit, as in Texas. And the software developer was a guy named Tom. And he was a real guy who put his heart into creating this little text editor program. But it had the ability to do things that, handling 2-byte code, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, CJK. And so I was all over this, and I corresponded with Tom, and you could buy it back then. It was shareware, $5 could get you a license to Text Edit. Text Edit Plus came out. Unfortunately, it is no longer functioning with the new operating system. But one of the fun parts about Text Edit Plus was our developer Tom had a sense of humor, and when you bought yourself a copy of Text Edit Plus and used it, it came with a folder, and it said "The Duke" on the folder. And what was it? It was a sound file of John Wayne, the great actor, saying in John Wayne cowboy style, "What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture?" He said. John Wayne being frustrated and, reacting like Rooster Cogburn in True Grit, one of the roles he played. "What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture?" And you could click on this file in TextEdit, and it would play the cut from the movie. And that was a big deal back in the early days of PCs, to be able to play a sound file through your editor. So by telling you this story, I'm telling you how old I am. So ancient, right? And so back in the day, that was a big deal. Your word processor plays audio files, right? So John Wayne saying, "What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture?" The answer is yes, please. Please do. Because otherwise we're not going to know about this Bodhisattva's mind. Your mind at the stage of the 10th stage Bodhisattva. How about that? Okay, there we go. Now, that was where we started. What happens next? We've finished now with the amazing story of Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva trying to tell us what this Bodhisattva's mind is like in his capacity to remember Dharma. Switch scenes. He's going to use it now. Now we find out the why. These next passages answer the question, why is it called Cloud of Dharma? Fa Yun Di, right? So the answer to the question why happens next. So this is where the sutra leaves the realm of description. I was going to make a point about how this is not philosophy, it's healing, it's compassion, it's function. It is relevant to the maximum point, especially in a time where so much is broken now, right? Where breathing the air can kill you if you happen to have air that contains these tiny little viruses. They can get into our human bodies and kill us, right? So we need healing. This is a hard time to live through. So, disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva on this stage lifts up a cloud of great compassion by means of the power of his vows. In Chinese, here's how it goes. It goes, 以自愿力, his own personal vows, 起大悲云, 大悲云, right? There's the first. So we got a 1, 2, 3, 4 different kinds of clouds that this Bodhisattva is lifting up. Now, with the qualities that we've been hearing about, now he can do this, right? All of that stuff was what? Preparation. That was the 10th stage of the Flower Garland Sutra, saying, at this point, you can do stuff now that you couldn't before. And here's what you can do now. Here's how it works. Here's how it's relevant. And the Bodhisattva uses vows to lift up clouds. Clouds rising. Clouds are big. Did anybody follow the return home of the 2 astronauts? Right, is it Doug and Bill coming back from the space station last week? They had spent 29 days up at the International Space Station, 2 American astronauts. They came back, and I was tuned into the NASA website watching their interview after they're back, and they're 2 normal guys. They call them the space dads, because they both have families and both have sons, young men. And one of the, was it Doug's son, said, "Dad, come on back, welcome back. And as soon as you're here and out of quarantine, I'm going to get a puppy, right?" So the astronaut dad made a deal with his son that if he got back safely, he was going to get him a puppy. And so the boy was like, "Hurry back, Dad, because I can't wait to get my dog." So it was, human and fun and lively to look through NASA's window at ourselves and the world and see the clouds. And as the 2 astronauts were describing, they did a nice job for being, scientists who are both test pilots and very nuts and bolts, no-nonsense warrior men of great skill who were asked to be poetic. That's not easy, and they did a great job describing the clouds seen from space, clouds that cover the earth. So what's the biggest thing on the planet? And the answer would be the oceans. But what is the biggest thing in space? And the answer would be clouds. So here's our Bodhisattva lifting up clouds. Qi yun, right? He's lifting up these clouds. And it's a cloud of great compassion. Because he has made vows to do so. All right? So let's just work with that just a bit here. What we're talking about is I'll put this down a little bit there. There we go. What we're talking about is a meditator. So the meditator spends a lot of his or her time alone, doing nothing but looking within, sitting quietly. Maybe they're doing some walking meditation or bowing meditation or mantra recitation or something, but they're not moving around much. And they're certainly not out on the town, checking out what the rest of the cool cats and kitties are doing on the street. They're looking within, practicing Dharma, reciting, and doesn't seem to be much going on. They are spending a lot of time alone in what my beloved doctoral chairman called discipline. We call it precepts. He calls it discipline. Disciplining, sounds scary, doesn't it, in that way? Disciplining their bodies, mouths, and minds to follow the form of the Dharma. Staying to the middle way. When they fall short, they add. When they go over, they reduce. To get to the middle way, they still eat and sleep, still check their phone and their email, but they're mostly disciplining, putting their bodies and minds into a mold, into a Dharma mold that is timeless and that produces these Bodhisattvas. And they've succeeded, but my point in telling you about this is to say a long part of that process seemed inhumane, seemed cold, seemed heartless even, certainly passionless, right? And that's why Buddhist cultivation will never be popular when it's done with the wish to transform using the Dharma. I did air quotes around popular, meaning it's not a lot of people who are willing to let go distraction of the senses in order to discipline in the form of the Dharma. Start out with a person and come up with a Buddha at the other end. Not very many people, because we want excitement. We don't believe it's real unless it impacts our eyes and ears, nose, tongue, and body and mind, right? So, okay, this is one of those rare people who is willing to let go of the distraction, of the, stimulation of the senses in order to listen within. Take the ears that hear out and listen to our own Guan Shi Yin, right? Take the eyes that scan the horizon and look within at the vistas of wisdom. Okay, so this Bodhisattva went through that long phase of disciplining, right, where it seems like nothing's going on. You're just sitting there. Why do you meditate for hours like that? Seemingly inhumane, not kind to do that, but look at the result. Is a cloud of great compassion. All right? And it's important to say this because, in fact, it is not inhumane. It is human to the ultimate point. It's kind of like, what? If you okay, here we go. What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture? So, yeah, please, draw us a picture. What would it be like? What's every single one of us listening to my voice today came through mother's pain. The pain of giving birth to a human child. I have not had that experience. I'm not a female, don't have a female's body, but I watch and I listen and I read and I know that giving birth is extremely, extremely painful. But show me a mother who says, I really wish you hadn't come. That was hurt too much. You're just a pain, a real pain in the butt, and I regret it. They don't, right? Moms say, oh, it was so worth it to bring forth you, my child, And there you go. The moms forget the pain because they're creating life. And the human species continues. Well, that's a good thing. Worth it, right? And the result is not nothing. It's a baby. It's a child. So the result of the disciplining of the Bodhisattva is not boredom and a dead mind and inhuman. It's working to remove the limiters of the illusory false self to give birth to the genuine connection with what is called 同体大悲, one body, great compassion, same substance, same body with all beings. Worth it. Worth it. Right? So people say, oh man, what do you get out of that? Loser, right? Nah. You get everything out of that. You're never lonely once you realize same body, great compassion, right? You're never lonely. You're, wherever you are, you feel at home. So, what's that worth? When I started my pilgrimage, bowing to City of 10,000 Buddhas, I felt like everyone was staring at me because I was doing something unexplainable, inexplicable. Who in the world wants to, bow to the ground outdoors? Can't you do that in your home, in a closet? Somebody said. Good. So, and I felt like the small end of a funnel. I was the small end and everybody else was and after 2.5 years, there had been a change whereby, kind of flipped around, every person, not every person, many, many, many of the people who came by and stopped to comment on us, or one way or the other, friendly or unfriendly, looked like family. They looked familiar. It was like I could see a kinship in some aspect, just the energy as somebody walked by, or an eyebrow, or a tone of a voice, but a sense of, tongti, yeah. Not to say that's great compassion, but it was definitely a switch, from feeling alone and isolated and broken and on everybody's radar screen as they laughed at me. It was like, oh, we're all doing this, we're bowing together. This is a work for everyone, So, this is our Bodhisattva is, because of his vows, or her vows, by means of the power of his vows, 自愿力, right? My own vow strength. What would it be? The vows would be something like, I want to make it hurt less for you. That would be vows, right? Because using the Dharma, using this disciplining, right? Instead of disciplining, I would like to substitute another word, choosing, making choices, right? Instead of alcohol, instead of brandy, instead of gin and vermouth and martinis, you substitute what? You choose water. Water, priceless, right? Just everywhere you go. I make a practice of travel. When I travel, I haven't traveled in a year almost, close, but did extensive travel to bring myself to Australia. 6 months it's been. Traveled to many, many countries and many states in the United States and Australia. And I made a practice of everywhere I went, trying the water and approaching the water, as sampling the water out of the tap, whatever was available. Now, you don't drink tap water in Shanghai, for example, or Beijing, or LA for that matter. But where it was available, local water, and tasting it, going, oh, this water tastes like this here. That's sure different. And at first it was like flavorless. What has less flavor than water out of the tap? Right? Not much. After a while, discovered that water is really different to the tongue, on the tongue. Depending on where you are, the altitude, how close you are to the ocean, of course, what the filtration plant dumps into, chlorine and not, that too. But just trying the water, suddenly it was like, man, such a variety and flavor. And how the water came alive as beverage of choice compared to going to the local store. Let's try some root beer today. Let's get some sarsaparilla. Oh, we got some ginger beer, non-alcoholic. Well, that's good. That's nice, occasionally, every now and then. But, boy, you look at the list of contents on a bottle of soda pop, and the stuff they put in, the high fructose corn syrup and all, and you think, I'd like some water, please. Yeah. Water doesn't disappoint, right? It doesn't pretend to be anything other than a beverage to keep you alive. And once you allow your sense buds, your sensation of flavor to subside a bit, to calm down, water has an amazing variety of flavors. So, anyway, the Bodhisattva says, right, I've been able to choose, not discipline, but I choose less of the things that harm me. I choose to let go of tobacco because it'll kill me. I choose to let go of alcohol because clarity when I meditate doesn't go up and down. No hangover from meditation, right? So you choose the stuff that enhances and supports and fosters well-being, and you let go the stuff that confuses and distracts and scatters and poisons, right? You let go meat a long time ago, because eating meat is not helpful to you and it's not helpful to the creature whom you're eating, right? You choose not to harm. And that's, I like that sense of precepts. For too many years, I, myself, understood precepts as limiting my freedom. Well, from one point of view, if freedom means follow your desires regardless, that's great, except you run into stuff like other people pursuing their desires. If you lived alone in the world, you could just chase desire and go as far as you can, right? But we're social beings, and everyone chasing their free desires is going to have chaos as a result. So the Bodhisattva goes, yeah, I believe there is a wisdom choice that actually keeps me safe and benefits others. Precepts, right? Wisdom behavior, I choose that. Welcome to the grown-up world of grown-ups, right? And when you found your religion, your practices on that understanding, you got something that will appeal to the adults, right? What is it? Cause and effect. The notion that somehow I'll be saved. Well, we're not going to go there today. But I was we're doing a podcast series here at the Gold Coast Dharma Realm, because we can't meet on Sundays. Our meditation class has been canceled for the time being because of the coronavirus. So we're bringing the teachings out in a form that people can digest at home, and going through the basics, just the fundamental explanations of the Dharma, and came up with that one. Back when I was bowing on a pilgrimage, myself and my companion, Professor Verhoeven, Marty, former Bhikshu Hung Chao, were saved pretty much every single day that we were out by preachers who based themselves mostly on goodwill, wanted to save us. And so they preached the gospel, the good words, the good news, right? And probably the thing that we heard the most stuck in my mind because it's so different from the way the Dharma is based. What was it? It was, get up from there. You can't work your way to heaven. Don't you know that God sees these pitiful efforts as nothing but filthy rags? Get up from there. Only by grace alone are you saved. And that was a message, right? It's consistent with maybe 90% of the world's religions that are theistic, right? The idea of a theos in the center, that this God is there, and it's his job, or her job, mostly his job, to pick among his believers the ones whom are worth saving and who are ready to be saved. So the job of the disciple is to wait patiently and make him or herself ready to be saved. So, okay, and that is a story, that is a message, that is a principle for many, many, many of the world's religions. The Buddha Dharma says it differently, and it appeals to me. It really appeals to me. The notion that no one saves you but yourself. No one can, no one may. You yourself must walk the path. Buddhas merely show the way, right? 无能得救为自救 Say 无能忘了我会说错了不要说你们会吗不会 So it's no one saves us but ourselves 无人得救为自救 Yeah So 意思是说什么菩萨临进门修行在个人 Okay that's the one Chinese version of it. So, point is this, right? Cause and effect. Plant your garden, weed it, water it, you'll harvest whatever you planted, right? It's not the case that I harvest the fruits of someone else's work. That makes sense. I like that. That's clear, you know. And the reason being, it's empowering. You get you get the fruits of your labor. And to my mind, to my experience, that's the way nature works, right? It's not the case that others somehow take on my karma for me. The Bodhisattva here lifts up a cloud of great compassion by means of the power of his vows because he truly feels the pain of living beings suffering, and he, having ended that process himself, wants them to make choices, to present them, let them know they have choices, how to wake up in a world of darkness, right? So what does he do? He sounds the vast thunder of Dharma, boom, boom. He forms thick clouds of blessings. Can you see them rising up? He uses Tong, Ming, and Wei, clear understanding and fearlessness as flashes of lightning. What a dramatic picture, right? Whoa, look at this. Sounding thunder, sending out blessings, virtue, and wisdom clouds, using Tong connections, clarity, Ming, understanding, and Wu Wei, fearlessness, like lightning shooting through the clouds to do what? To speak Dharma, to explain what's going on to living beings. He makes all manner of bodies appear. Now, this is, Buddha Dharma. This is like Buddha Sui. He can do this. They are called transformation bodies, response bodies. They go and come, encircling to and fro. And in an instant of thought, in faster than you can snap your fingers, he pervades, travels through world systems in an Avatamsaka number, right? more world systems as there are fine motes of dust in hundreds of thousands of kotis of millions of world systems. He can do that to do what? To proclaim the great Dharma and subdue the hatred of demons. Bodhisvaha, hallelujah, right? How cool is that? He is a Dharma speaker. I'm going to have to step away briefly. I will be right back. Going to stop sharing my screen and come right back. Don't go away. Okay, we're back. Sorry for that. Let us take a look at what our Bodhisattva has created. There we are. He is a speaker now, a speaker of Dharma. And what does he do? He uses that memory power to teach. And just that, I said at the start of the lecture today that we want to look deeper into the text. And what occurred to me as I was thinking, what does a deeper look yield? When you look deeper here, what do you see? What I saw is the Bodhisattva path in the Flower Garland Sutra is heart. right? We have this phrase in English, he's all heart, right? The purpose of this text is to inspire people to make life hurt less for your neighbors. That's what it's about. That's what the sutra does. It shows us how a human being can become selfless and can help others. Is that philosophy? Is that abstract? Is that cosmology? Is it too much Sanskrit, therefore can't explain it? None of the above, right? What is it? No, this is admirable. This is really amazing. Not only is that what it's about, but it tells you how to go ahead and do that. And in this case, it's you learn all the Dharma from these beings, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, so you can bring out whatever it takes to help your neighbor. Yeah. Now, in this case, he proclaims the great Dharma and subdues the hatred of demons. What does it say here? It says, 演说大法，摧伏魔怨. There we go. So, proclaims the great Dharma and subdues the hatred of demons. That's a powerful word, scary word, demons, right? Why? It's because it's not easy to do this work. We sang the song about never disparaging Bodhisattva, our hero, right? And talking about who? Talking about Changbuqing Pusa, the Bodhisattva never disparaging. And it's from the Lotus Sutra, and there's a story, and you go, wow, how nice. Here's a scriptural being. Here's a divine person, a bodhisattva, appears in a sutra, the Lotus Sutra, and how sweet, how wonderful that he's got a habit of bowing to people. He sees somebody, goes up, he bows to them, and he says, I don't dare slight you because you're going to become a Buddha. And you think, oh, copacetic, cool. Not at all. No. What happens? People throw stones at him. People shout at him. People kick him when he's down. Don't you go to a random call and giving me some sort of foolish prediction. Who are you to, It's like, what? What happened? Wasn't he doing good? Nope. That's not how people reacted to the good that he was doing. So here's our bodhisattva here in the 10th stage, who is what? He wants to do good. He wants to help. And what does he meet? He meets the hatred of demons. That's the way the world is, huh? Interesting. So you could really, really write an interesting master's thesis on this, the reality of good and evil in the world. You could bring forth all kinds of citations, and you could support your theory with Diangu, right? With evidence from every tradition and every story. Oh my goodness, every tribe, every clan. Whoa. There's, in the Iroquois tradition of North America, there's the story of the peacemaker, and our mentor and friend Joanne Shenandoah tells the story of Skenanahaure. And Skenanahaure is called the peacemaker. And this Hiawatha is her name, called Hiawatha among white people. And he came around at a time when the 6 tribes that later made up the Iroquois Confederacy were earlier at each other's throats. There was nothing but hideous bloodshed among these neighboring native tribes, the first peoples of North America. And the peacemaker was determined to stop the warfare, find a way to get them to bury their weapons beneath the great white tree of peace. And in the story, again, here's a great bodhisattva, go, go, go with your vows. Well, there's a villain in the story, and Tadadaho. And Tadadaho was so twisted that his hair had snakes. He had snakes for hair. And his hair was all twisted, and his body was all twisted up too. But he was evil, and he spread slanderous stories about the peacemaker, Skenenahare. And so this noble goal of creating a union and a harmony and an end to hostilities among the tribes of, this is mostly in what is now New England and Ontario. Back then, and legally by rights, it was all Iroquois land. The Iroquois land was from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to Wisconsin, and from the Laurentian Shield in northern Ontario all the way down to Georgia, back before the white man showed up. Anyway, that's part of the story we're not going to go into today. What happened was, through great act of will and courage and fearlessness, the peacemaker was able to subdue the demon, Tadadaho, and comb the snakes out of his hair, right? And turn his heart good. So he subdued the hatred of the demon, and the Iroquois Confederacy came into being, and it's, interestingly enough, it's matriarchal as well, so that the clan mothers were the ones who made the big decisions about the tribes. They didn't want to leave it to the men who were just so full of testosterone that all they could do was fight each other. So Ayanwata and Skenenahare were able to create this state of peace, and they took all the weapons and they buried them underneath this big, tall, white pine tree, and they put an eagle in the top of the tree, and the eagle was there to, with his eagle eyes, his sharp vision, prevent anybody from sneaking out to the tree to get their weapons back to start the war again. He would scream and shout anytime he saw anybody trying to go back to war. So the Iroquois Confederacy came into being, and they wrote a constitution that Thomas Jefferson, among others, borrowed as the foundation of the United States Constitution. It was the first written legal code on North American soil, and a lasting one. So how sad that the warlike peoples from Europe came to destroy all of this. We won't go there today. But that's a perfect illustration of how a bodhisattva can come and subdue the hatred of demons and create something lasting and wholesome and conducive to well-being among humans as a result, right? So proclaiming the great Dharma and subduing the hatred of demons. I would recommend to everybody Joanne Shenandoah's Peacemaker's Journey. It's one of her albums. You can find it out on iTunes, and it's entirely her composition, and she sings it all in the language of the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Long House. So she's singing in Native American language, but the songs, you completely absorb those new sounds in the first 30 seconds, and just listen to the sound of the canoe going through the quiet water, the sound of the tribal drums, and it's a peacemaker's journey. True, wonderful story, grounded in the wind and the water of North America, our fundamental sort of soil for those of us who are listening as Americans, right? So here's our Bodhisattva who makes all manner of bodies appear. Maybe the body of a Native American hero, Skenenahare, the peacemaker, circling to and fro, pervading throughout world systems to proclaim the Dharma of peace and subdue the hatred of demons like Tadadaho with snakes in his hair, right? Ami Tofo. Next, page 40, Sam, have you got it there? Moving to the next paragraph here. 复过此树于无量百千亿那由他世界微尘树国度 随助众生心之所要，树甘露雨，灭除一切众惑尘厌。是故此地名为法云。He continues beyond that number, and in lands as many as the fine motes of dust, in limitlessly many, hundreds of thousands of kotis of nayutas of world systems, according with what delights the minds of all their sentient beings. He pours down the rain of sweet dew, dispelling the dust and flames of their multitudes of delusions. Thus, this stage is called the Dharma Cloud. Yeah. Love it. So, we're getting now the function of this Bodhisattva's incredible capacity to hold the Dharma, right? And the image that comes out of this paragraph is more than how many? Last one was world systems, fine motes of dust, hundreds of thousands, kotis, nayutas of world systems. So, tiny dust mote particle, one world system, many dust mote particles. Multiple world systems, you know how many dust particles worth of bodies this Bodhisattva sends forth to teach, because he can now. And the image we get here is the teaching that this Bodhisattva does is according with what people like. And that, I think, is a really key point here in the Dharma. Throughout the flavor of the Dharma is non-compulsory. It's, you do it because you're led to it. You're drawn to it. You want to. You're not scared into it. You're not threatened into it. You're not forced to do it ever. And, oh my, I remember the shock that went through my system when somebody told me that they had gone to school in a Buddhist school, but you know what they heard from the teachers? You better do that or you're going to fall into the hells. If you don't behave, you're going to fall into the hells, right? And it was like, what? You know, when do they get to the Buddhist part of it? Because that is nothing that I heard that would draw me to want to learn something about a belief system if I was threatened with violence to my eternal soul if I failed to do it. You know, it's like, oh man, that's bad religion. That's what's wrong with religion, is when people who don't know themselves anything about the hells, but they just borrow some sort of violent rhetoric to scare young people into behaving. Well, you lose them when you do that. You lose their hearts. And look at what our Bodhisattva does here. He accords with what delights the minds of sentient beings to pour down the rain of sweet dew. Oh my, that sounds good. Dispelling the dust and flames of their multitudes of delusions. So, cloud imagery. This is the stage called the Dharma Cloud, right? How cool is that? Right? So, we got an image of sweet dew, and it comes down from the Bodhisattva's understanding what people like, to wash the dust away and to douse the flames of pain and misery and affliction. Imagine if the planet Earth, suddenly we heard reports of auspicious clouds appearing overhead and a rain coming down and washing away the coronavirus from the air and completely quelling and quenching so that people could breathe freely. Imagine, right? Just rain it away. Right? So, this is called the Dharma Cloud stage. Powerful. I'm going to go back to the paragraph we just looked at here and extract from this the idea of a preacher. A preacher is someone familiar in. I'm an American citizen, a migrant here in Australia, and America is a relatively young nation. So is Australia, given nations like India and China that have been here forever, and Egypt and all. In American history, the religion and the church was essential to the survival of pioneers, people who had just arrived. Reality, the world around them, was so threatening, and life was so short and brutal and painful and harsh that they had to turn to the invisible, to God and to Jesus mostly, among others, for their strength, because the alternatives were just too harsh, too hard to bear, right? So the role of the preacher was key, because the brand new pilgrims and pioneers landing in a strange, foreign, harsh, unknown land, right, that they came and conquered, they needed a regular boost from the preacher, who they opened their minds to, assuming that he or she saw further and knew more than they did about the invisible parts of life, like fear, for example, and courage, counter the fear, for example, right? So, okay, preacher man. Well, particularly in the African American community, in the black community, when they arrived as slaves, completely against their will, and were mistreated and abused for someone else's financial gain that they never got a piece of, the preacher offered the only sweetness or light in their lives, right? And what was he preaching mostly was salvation in the by and by, right? That there is a better world awaiting beyond this one, which is so painful. All right, so that has a lot to do with our our national story in America, and recently Congressman John Lewis passed away at the age of 80 or 81, was he? And he himself wanted to be a preacher. He wanted to become a theologian because he had a wish to, like a bodhisattva, to get people past their pain. And he was colleague and brother in arms with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as I was reading our passage today, it occurred to me, I thought, oh my goodness, who am I looking at in this description? I thought, that's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Congressman John Lewis proclaiming the great Dharma, well, the truth, and subduing the hatred of demons. And this just the idea of this preacher, particularly Dr. King, who was indeed a reverend and a preacher, Baptist, but John Lewis as well, who personally embodied this fearlessness, sounding a thunder of Dharma and forming thick clouds of blessings, virtue, and wisdom, using clear understanding and fearlessness as flashes of lightning. I thought that just came to my mind right away because recently we've had, with the passing of Congressman John Lewis, we got to hear his last words read by Morgan Freeman, right? Everyone's favorite voice actor. He's got this incredibly clear baritone, sonorous sound. So Congressman Lewis wrote words to be read at his funeral, and he asked Morgan Freeman, who was a friend of his, to read them after his passing. Well, we had the chance to listen to those, and what did he talk about? He talked about voting and the power of choice, choosing, disciplining, you know. So what occurred to me as I was reading this passage today was, here is a preacher who is using clear understanding, blessings, virtue, and wisdom to help people wake up, but how hard it is because demons resist in this world of binary duality, right? Whenever there's great good, there will be great evil to counter it and balance it. It's kind of the way it is, right? And right up until the moment of his enlightenment, Mara tried to stop the Buddha, stop the prince from waking up. And only as Prince Siddhartha countered the attempts of the demons, only then was his enlightenment complete. Mara sent his daughters, he sent his armies, he appeared in front of the Buddha and tried to create doubt in his mind and shook the earth. And the Buddha, the prince, put his hand down, calmed the earth, woke up the daughters, made the armies turn their arrows into lotus flowers, and the demon king, Mara, said, "Curses, I'm out of here," and gone. One more Buddha, right? So, wow, subduing the hatred of demons. What occurred to me was, I teach, on occasion when asked, I teach a class on speaking Dharma. And somewhere in the process of that instruction, I play some sound clips of great speakers, letting the sweet dew rain of Dharma fall, right? But not only Buddhist, speaking Buddhist Dharma. One of them, I play a clip of Adolf Hitler in the Reichstag, inciting people to fatal violence, to brutal genocide. And I ask the listeners to listen, where in their body are they hearing Hitler's voice as he is fomenting hatred? And what do your muscles do when you hear the sounds coming out of this human being? And if people are anything like me, they tense up. I mean, I'm in danger as I hear that voice, and I don't want those sounds. Then I play this next clip, and I say, now tell me what you feel. Where in your body do you hear the sound of this human voice speaking his truth. And I play Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech from August 28th, 1968 in Washington, D.C. on the steps of the nation's capital, and where's the Lincoln Memorial, and across the reflecting pond. And then I asked people to listen to the sound of and the cadence and the music of this voice and feel what you feel. So I thought it would be useful today, especially in honoring Congressman John Lewis and his contribution to a peaceful world and the Bodhisattva path, to play his friend and mentor, Dr. King's speech. It's only 7 minutes long, but I think it's really worth it for people who've never heard this speech. You've always, it's part of, this is one of the classics of oratory and elocution. It's one of the most powerful speeches given in the 20th century, certainly, and it's eternal, it will last. So let's take a look here and listen. I'm going to empower our screen share for video clip and see what you all think about this sound.
Satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only.
Now, Dr. King gave a longer speech, but this is only 7 minutes, and it cuts right in to where his famous I Have a Dream begins.
We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote, and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair.
All right, this is where Dr. King begins the I Have a Dream portion, and think of the imagery in the sutra about using fearlessness and using blessings and virtue as flashes of lightning as you listen to his eloquence.
I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
I just want to point out that could be the sutra text.
This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
So indeed, it think it does the soul good to periodically, maybe once a year, recall that moment. I wasn't able to attend, but I had classmates who were there on the Capitol Mall, listening to Dr. King with their own ears. So, all right. Well, today we moved forward in the text from theory to practice. The Bodhisattva, we hear about him, what he can do, what you can do at that stage of your development in the Bodhisattva path, and then we moved on today to what the Bodhisattva does with that ability, right? And the answer is he becomes a preacher, or she becomes a speaker of truth, and does so with thunder and lightning and sweet dew rain, right? Subduing demons. Well, in Dr. King's case, it takes more than one talk to subdue the demons that obstructed his quest for freedom. But Congressman John Lewis carried that work forward, and the next generation is rising now to pick up the torch and move it on. So, all right. We're going to conclude today's lecture at this point, but I'm going to ask some of the monks who are online at the moment to share any information you have about the next step in our Dharma assemblies coming up. What have you got for us?
Okay, hello there, Master. Hello, everyone. It's Jinwei speaking. So, yeah, we have a few announcements. So, besides of our all online activities, ceremonies, practices, and lectures, you can find all of them on our website, berkeleymonastery.org. We have a few upcoming events. So, in the end of the month, from August 29th to September 4th, will be 7 days Amitabha session. You can register for it. You can find all information on our website about it. So every person who will register and attend the ceremonies and practices can also set up 2 memorial plaques. Is the form over there, you can find. And I guess it's Jin Forshu next to me sitting, that in first day also will be transmission of 8 precepts, right?
Yeah, 8 precepts.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the 7 days Amitabha session. Also, the next month, September 5th, on Saturday, we will have an online Ulambana ceremony from 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. And the next day, September 6th, on Sunday, we'll have an Earth-Store day of recitation of Earth-Store Sutra in Chinese.
Yeah,
right?
地藏经, 我们诵地藏经1天.
Yeah, this is what we want to share with you.
All right, thank you for that. I've got the announcements here on the website. So the Dizang Jing is September 6th, one day, and you can register here, right? 可以在网络上可以登记。
可以 yeah.
好。Okay, and then here is the Ulambana Ulampan Jie. And again, we invite people to register, and you can join in. And then we have this is a first for Berkeley Monastery to have a week-long Amitabha session, especially because it will be online, you know. You can stay right at home and avoid encountering the coronavirus and still recite the Buddha's name, recite the Amitabha Sutra. You can take the Eightfold Precepts to begin on Saturday, August 29th. So that's 20 days from now. That's not quite 3 weeks.
Yes, there's no limit in terms of the space. I think up to 1,000 people can join.
Yeah.
Our Buddha hall is much more smaller.
Yeah, that's right. It's as big as empty space now. So, yeah. All right, excellent. Okay, so next week, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go further into the Avatamsaka Sutra and go into more on the Bodhisattva's abilities in, oh, I don't see my dedication of merit here. I'll have to bring it up from inside here. So more on the Bodhisattva as he or she uses the abilities that he has cultivated, she's cultivated now, through the 9 stages up to the 10th stage, and puts them to use as preachers, as farmers, as doctors and nurses, moms and dads, right? So all the different applications of this new level of awakening. And my job, as we mentioned at the start of this lecture, is to throw a lens on the text, to bring it, to make it clear without color, without distortion or corruption, right? So that folks can see how the Buddha's wisdom in the Avatamsaka Sutra can guide our steps into the 21st century. So, remember that the carnivorous is an anagram of the coronavirus. Did you notice that? Meat eating brought us here. So where will plant eating take us? Let's make a wish. We'll use the traditional dedication of merit to share our merit. Please send out your hearts, and see you all next week. As one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, they are miles away to bring compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, and all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. I've got a handbell. I'm going to ring it 3 times and encourage everybody to join me if you care to do so. Do a half bow. Here we go. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. See you all next week, everyone. Amitofo.